Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and today I'm working on day 6 of By the Will for God's Behold the Lord. I'm in Matthew 1:21 today, which says, "She will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." And so I have this paper actually from my old House of Books subscription. I no longer have a subscription with them, but I enjoy so many of their papers, and so this is one that they had printed. So I just made it the size of my Bible page so that I could work on it outside of my Bible. I have this awesome prayer from Spurgeon talking about Matthew 1:21, which I will read to you. It says, "Lord, save me from my sins. By the name of Jesus, I am encouraged thus to pray. Save me from my past sins, that the habit of them may not hold me captive. Save me from my constitutional sins, that I may not be the slave of my own weaknesses. Save me from the sins which are continually under my eye, that I may not lose my horror of them. Save me from secret sins, sins unperceived by me, from my want of light. Save me from sudden and surprising sins. Let me not be carried off my feet by a rush of temptation. Save me, Lord, from every sin. Let not any iniquity have dominion over me." And so I thought that was such a great prayer as we look into Matthew 1:21 today. I do have these special little dies. These are from Corinne. She just changed her name, I believe, to Creative Worship, but it was Sweet and Sassy Stamps. And so I have these big number dies. I'm using some HVAC tape over some cardstock. That is what that metal looking stuff is. And it is amazing stuff because you can actually run it through and emboss it same way that you can emboss also like baking pans and dishes, those disposable ones. I have done that as well, but this is a little bit more manageable so you don't have to have baking dishes all over the place if you want to use them. So I am using some alcohol ink on these today. So I have a stream, caramel, and mushroom colors. Originally, I was keeping them on the embossing plate because I thought I would run them through again, but it all kind of changed when I used my blower and it started blowing everything around. And so instead I took them off. I will reline them up actually. I'm not going to send them through my Big Shot again, but I'm actually going to sand the top of them to reveal that metal again. So this is definitely just a process. I definitely wanted to use that teal because I have that tealish blue boat from By the Well for God. That boat was actually connected to another boat, that die cut, and so I decided to snip them apart and just use that tealish blue boat. I'm not sure if you saw that previous, you can't see it on the screen right now, but I am just working with all these colors. It kind of has this rusty teal look, so I'm just going back and forth. That's kind of how alcohol inks work. You can always add more or take away even with some rubbing alcohol. That was kind of where I wanted my eye to be drawn to for this page because it says 121, which stands for Matthew 1:21. So anyways, I have this sanding paper, the sanding disc from Tim Holtz, and I am just lining them back up with the embossing folder and running my sanding disc on top to reveal some of that metal so you can see more of the design of the embossing folder in that metal. Once these are all sanded, I will use some anti-static powder that's going to take away some of the stickiness left by the residue of that alcohol ink. I also had this photo from Tim Holtz that I thought went perfectly alongside the theme of this kit, but I did want to age it some, so I know you saw me before adding some hot water to tea bags, and we are going to use those tea bags today to age up this photo. So I am just dumping all the tea out. I do bring it over to my sink and run these tea bags with water and dry them with my heating tool, and now I'm just trying to line them up so that there's not too much of an overlap, so I'm going to make sure that those seams are nice and clean. I also have this collage paper from Tim Holtz. I did snip it out of one of his collage papers of these birds, and I thought that would be really fun to add to this photo as well, kind of like they're coming off the photo a little bit because they're going into that border. So I'm using my collage medium. It is almost gone, and I am just adding these seagulls to the photo before I add my tea bags on top. I do have to say, I think it's always better to use a little bit more collage medium than you think you might need, because once it dries, you don't want too many bubbles popping up. And so by using extra collage medium, you're making sure that none of those form, that everything is nice and tight onto the paper. So I'm just gonna set that aside for a little bit, and then I do come in with my heat tool, making sure that it's all good. And then I will cut away the excess of these tea bags and come in with my decal edge trimmer from Tim Holtz as well. Now with this decal edge trimmer, I should have dried this just a little bit more. I could tell by snipping off the excess that it wasn't completely dry. And on this edge right here, I do have quite a bit of trouble getting that to cut cleanly, but eventually I just come in with my heat tool, holding it there, making sure that it's dry, and then it ends up cutting just fine. So I just stayed the course and stayed there with it while it was drying, and then everything lined up perfectly. I will add a little bit of distress ink and walnut stain around the outside of both the photo and the boat ephemera, and that will kind of make everything cohesive. And then we're going to start working on this cluster. Now, honestly, the rest of this page didn't go as smoothly as I was hoping. I had high hopes for this page, but it just didn't come out exactly the way I was hoping. But it's all good. I still like it, and I feel like things grow on you as you just sit and look at them. And so hopefully this page will grow on me. Anywho, I have this boat that I decided to add a little bit extra with by adding some clear embossing glaze, and I'm also doing that to the stamp saying he will save his people. So that will kind of set that apart as well, because it was kind of melting in too much with the background. So I was hoping by adding that embossing glaze it would help make it stand out a little bit more. I have this netting that I had in my stash that I'm definitely going to add as a layering piece behind everything. I definitely love all the texture I can get. I also have some of this mummy cloth from Tim Holtz. You know me, all the texture, all the fabric, all the things, basically that's how I do things. So anyways, I'm adding that to the bottom left-hand corner, actually eventually underneath the boat. But you'll see me add this at first, and then I rip it out and re-add it. It was a lot of minutes of me just kind of going back and forth. I had to take out a lot of footage, or else you would have been sitting here for like 25 minutes of just me on fast forward trying to decide stuff. So I do use my tiny attacher to add these numbers down, and then I'm going to come in and add little pop dots on the back side of this boat. I want it to stand out a little bit from the background. I always like adding some dimension to my pages, and so that is what is popping off today. And then I decided that I wanted some more texture in the background. So I grabbed this Pebbles and Sand stamp set. I was so excited about this stamp set releasing, and I actually really like how this part of the page turned out. So at first I'm using Versamark ink, thinking that I'll just add this nice light look, and you can barely see it on this paper. I guess because there's not enough color on the background really. It's a very light blue. So I decided to come in again with some tea dye, but I am stamping some of it off and then just stamping it in different places around this page, adding some extra texture to the background. And I actually really love it, and it works perfectly with the background of this page. So now I want to make these little quote chips stand out a little bit more. He will save his people. So I grabbed this fabric washi tape from 49 and Market. I'm going to add just a little bit to the back side of each of these, and then cut them out, and I will place them once they are good and dry. I do have this fabric washi tape hanging off a little bit of the cluster, so I do come back in with that anti-static tool that just has powder in it, and that's going to make these not sticky really on the back side, simply since I didn't know exactly where this was going to be put, and so I didn't want them sticking already to the page. So now I'm coming in, I want to add a little bit more of something. Just felt like it was missing something. The boat felt off place basically. And so I'm using these little tags that I pre-made a couple weeks ago when I knew this kit was coming out. I like how this says perfection because God saves his people and he is perfect in his saving. And so I thought that was a fun little addition to this page. I do also have these little tiny snippets from Tim Holtz. I'm using my sanding disc to rough up the edges a little bit before I add some color on them. And then eventually I'm going to add them to the left-hand side of this cluster. This is where I decide I wasn't liking anything. And so I ripped all the mummy cloth off and then adding these to the left-hand side. I wanted to see if I really wanted that mummy cloth or not, but basically decide to re-add it. But I will put everything down first with some Fabri-Tac glue. And then I will add that boat back into my cluster down on the bottom left-hand corner. So after this whole thing of ripping everything apart, I do decide to come back in and add that mummy cloth. It could have gone either way, I guess, but I will add some Fabri-Tac glue to kind of hold it better in place. Before it was just being held by the pop dots, and so that wasn't going to hold it very well. So having it under the whole cluster really helps. I also wanted to add a little brad into this little perfection tag that I had. So I'm going to come in with my crocodile and add a little hole right there so I can hammer in one of the larger brads from Tim Holtz. If you have a husband, go ahead and steal his finishing hammer. You can ding up some brads with it and it'll get more use in the craft room than in real life. So just keep it in there. So now I am rounding off these page corners to match up with my Bible page, and I will add this page in with some scrapbook.com's version of score tape, and then this page will be complete. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. You can follow me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. I'll try to link everything I use down below in the description, and I hope you have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.